Hello and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Lester and thank you for joining us for episode 102, where tonight we'll talk and look back at the pre-season, round up the tactics and the games, talk about Pedro Neto's departure, talk about the departures and the arrivals still to happen, take some of your questions and look ahead to Saturday's trip to the Emirates. Of course, I'm joined by our captain, Mark Knock. Ben Husband is there somewhere. He'll be joining us shortly while he sorts out his positional sense of the camera. You may have noticed at the end of the credits there, you may have not, we're not a couple of sponsors, and that's not particularly for the show, that's for the team. The Wolves Report has entered the Content Creators Cup, and it's basically a tournament co-ran with Always Wolves and the Wolves Foundation to raise as much money as we can for the foundation and the fantastic job they do in the community. The sponsors of New Homes, Mortgage Experts, Act Solutions and Edwards & Co. Chartered certified accountants and business advisors. Those guys are our charity sponsors, helping us with the kit and donating to the foundation as well. So thank you very much for partnering with the Wolves Report. Okay, it's been an interesting pre-season. I don't know how much you can read into it. You see a game that you win, you get excited. You see a game that you lose, it doesn't really matter. It's left and right, isn't it? The main standout for me so far this pre-season has been the persistence with a back four. How interesting do you find that, considering there has been no new centre-back arrival?
I mean, it's no secret he wants to play with the four. I think he thinks we'll be a little bit more attacking and be able to maybe control possession a bit more with the four at the back. I'm not sure we've got the personnel to do it at the moment. I certainly think it's a little bit of a risk going into the Arsenal game if we're going to play a three, if we're going to play a four as opposed to a three. So, but I mean, he sees the players on a day-to-day basis, doesn't he? If he feels like with Mosquera coming in and Totti and obviously Dawson and Bueno, if they're going to play much of a part of the season, I don't know. But he obviously feels he's got the personnel to do that, because it would seem pretty strange to line up most of the season in that system and then not take it into the first game of the season. So he obviously has seen something that maybe thinks we can make us a little bit more solid. Maybe he's going to drop the holding midfielders slightly deeper and give us a little bit more stability in front of the back line and try and break with a little bit more pace in the wide areas. I don't know, but he's obviously seen something that if he thinks he's going to work. So, you know, if that's what he wants to go with, you've got to trust him.
Ben, thank you for joining us. Mirror Football's writer, Ben Husband. Ben, I'm just saying to Nocky then, regarding the most interesting thing for me this pre-season has been the switch to a back four. Now, is this a matter of, we know we can play wing backs already, we don't really need to practice because these players have been playing it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Is this a matter of practicing a back four for when we can play, or do you think it's the full way forward with Wolves now?
I think if you asked O'Neill, I think he'd say that he wants to play four at the back. That's the formation he wants to play. I'm still not convinced the personnel's there, but I don't see it being a massive issue in us practicing it in case we need to switch when the season goes on. I'd still like, I'm pretty sure they're still going to be chasing another centre-back, because I'm not totally convinced that Totti Gomez is in a four. Obviously, we can't be entirely convinced on Mosquera. He's, not played Premier League football at a consistent level, so we'll have to see what that looks like. But yeah, I think if you asked him, I think four at the back is what he wants to do, but that's also what several other managers have wanted to do with Wolves for what feels like the last 5 years. It's basically just been a recurring conversation. It's difficult to imagine how we're still struggling to recruit players that can fit a formation, but we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if we start with a four and then he eventually goes back to a five. But I think it all depends on the next 2 and a bit weeks and what they can get through the door in terms of more centre backs. I'm not convinced that the starting centre back in a four is at the club as we speak.
2 centre backs, or would you say would you see as Mosquera or Totti as potentially one of them, or do you think one centre back coming in fixes the problem?
I think Mosquera would play in a back four, and then there'll be one other. So we'll see who that is.
Yeah, Nocky, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you'd have said, like this time last year, we're going to the Premier League next season with Yerson, Mosquera and Totti Gomez as your centre backs, that would have been quite a fright to many. But Mosquera went to America. He did well. But the big surprise for me, and I mean, I'll hold my hands up, he went to Spain last year and he was fantastic. They were raving about him. They wanted to sign him pre-season. He even played right back sometimes and got forward. And I've got to be honest, in pre-season, he's probably not as kind on the ball as Max Kilman, but he certainly seems to have probably more defensive aggression and less vulnerability in behind than Max would have. Max is a £40 million footballer. He's left-footed English. He's a very good footballer, but Mosquera looks, for me, more an aggressive defender. So have we unearthed a gem here, or do you think we've still got to see how that one pans out?
I think if we were signing him now, then I think we'd be really pleased. We think it's some really good business because they were raving about him in Spain. They absolutely wanted to sign him and Wolves wouldn't let him go. There's a little bit of nervousness, I think, because we saw a very raw version of Mosquera when he was here before. He had a couple of opportunities and there was flashes of quality. I thought he was very strong and he used his physicality well, which is perhaps something you could level against Max Kilman. He was never physical enough, whereas Mosquera likes to get stuck into things. But time will tell. I mean, you've got to give him an opportunity. And obviously O'Neill wants to keep him because he could have cashed in on him and we could be looking at a new centre-back coming in as a replacement. I do think we need another one. I agree with Ben. I think we will start with a 4 and I think we will end up back in a 3 because I'm not convinced with the 4 we've got there. There's 2 natural centre halves who could play in a 4. Dawson, I think I expect him to have a real bit part season if he has an impact at all. Totti as a centre half, I'm nervous about. There's mistakes in there. He's done a job for us in that position and he's played left in a 3 and he's done a good job there. But you're always a little bit nervous when the ball's coming over the top towards him. Although he's physical and he's strong, his positional sense is a little bit of concern for me. And Bueno, I think the jury's still out on Bueno. So I think we've got to go into the market now. We've got the funds to do that. We've got to bring in another centre half who can complement what we've already got. But I do expect to see Mosquera as our starting centre half, and then it will be at the moment Totti. But I think that Totti's the one most likely to be replaced in the short term.
For me, Ben, if Wolves were going to be playing counter-attacking football and they were tucking in not quite Nuno-esque, but of that style, you would say that Santiago Bueno and Craig Dawson will probably be centre-backs because probably better box defending. But if you're going to play with a slightly higher line and the 2 players that would be less vulnerable would be Totti and Mosquera.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I don't think that's the way that they're going to want to set up. And I think it's difficult as well because we talk about like 4 at the back, 3 at the back, 5 at the back. But obviously it's going to look different throughout the game as well. So when we've got the ball, it might look a more traditional 4. But then if you can afford Lamina to drop in and almost become a third centre-back that sits in between the 2 defenders, I think that dramatically changes the way it looks as well. I think it's going to be interesting because I think he does want to fundamentally change the way they do play. And I mean, having someone like Dawson in the squad is going to be so useful to a player like Mosquera and Santi Bueno, who haven't played a lot of Premier League football. Just having like a really canny operator that's in there that can talk them through, even in trainings, in the dressing room, and just be, because we haven't got that much experience in the squad really, outside of Dawson. So I think he'll come in and out the squad, in and out the lineup. Sorry, but yeah, I think there's no way that the 2 central defenders will be Bueno and Dawson. It's just not the way that O'Neill will want to set up. I'm just convinced that there needs to be another central defender that's signed, because I think even with there's been a lot of briefings that they like Totti as like a backup left back as well. I think they're sort of almost showing their hand on what they want from Totti. I think they want him as that defender that can cover all bases. And when Wolves are in a pinch, can go to left back, but is predominantly a good solid centre back that most Premier League clubs I think would have in their squad happily. But I think at the minute the squad, in my opinion, looks okay, looks better than it did. But I still think the 11 needs to improve. I think that's the difference to this window than previous windows, when I've always felt like we've got 11 good players, let's improve the squad. I think there's definite room that you go, the 11 needs to be improved a little bit now.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to talk about Pedro Neto in a little bit, but if you take Pedro Neto and Max Kilman out, it's going to hurt most teams because you're taking that two accomplished left-footed footballers. Granted, Neto's injury record hasn't been great, but when he's played, Spurs away, Man City at home, Villa home, unplayable, absolutely unplayable. We'll talk about that in a bit. And Max as well, probably sometimes a little bit positionally naive, sometimes probably a little bit placid in terms of his approach, but a lovely footballer that's quite often started off many a good move for Wolves. Something else I picked up on in pre-season, Nocky. We talked about the back four, and as Ben said, it doesn't always tend to pan out to be a traditional back four. Not so much on Saturday, but it almost went to a three when, and usually I thought it would be the other way around, but almost Aït-Nouri sat as a third centre-back. Mascara moved over, and they really tried to push. Whether it was Lima earlier on, and he put that fantastic assist in for Rodrigo Gomez, and then Doherty more. So it almost looks like it was a three that pushed Doherty forward more. So it wasn't wing backs; it was a wing back when they were trying to overload on the right hand side. Is that something that you guys noticed in pre-season as well?
I think that in general the game's changed, hasn't it? I mean, when we were younger, you set up with a 4-4-2. Everyone stayed in their position. Your wingers got chalk on the boots. Your centre forward stay up front, and you had one big guy, one little guy. You know, it's changed now. It's a very fluid system. I think that O'Neill likes players that are comfortable in a couple of positions. He likes people to fit in. He doesn't mind if the centre halves take a little bimble up front. Max Kilman used to do it, and then you'd have one of Lamina or Gomez drop in to support that space behind him. So I think it's a different game now, and I think, you know, Ben touched on it, and he's absolutely right. It's a hybrid system. It can play however you need it to play. So how we set up on paper isn't necessarily how we're going to play in a game. And I think if we did set up with a 4 against Arsenal, there's opportunities to almost drop Lamina if he's fit into that position and play with a 3 and break when you need to and adjust that position as you go. So it is something that is pretty evident, you know, with Pedro Lima getting far up the field. He's got players dropping in behind him. It's just a modern style of football. I think that you've got everyone who can play in different positions. So it's not something I think we should be surprised about. And I think with O'Neill, he's a very forward-thinking manager who wants to do things a little bit differently. But he's not naive either. He'll know that there are weaknesses in that defensive area that he needs to address before we regiment ourselves to 4 at the back.
I think it's no surprise, Ben, either that Wolves have been linked with probably 3 or 4 left-footed centre-backs. I think they've all been 6'4", 6'5", all very decent on the ball, big boys, left-footed. So I think there's no smoke without fire. I know agents are firing left, right and centre, but it's no surprise that there's a left-footed centre-back after a left-footed centre-back after a left-footed centre-back that Wolves have been linked with.
Yeah, there's a definite prototype on what they're going to be looking for, and that's what a good recruitment team should actually be doing as well. It's rather than just trying to stick a player that you quite like into a system, you're better off almost looking at the exact type of player that you want and going out to find them that way. I think sort of like reverse engineering it a bit helps when you're looking for a certain type of player. And I think, you know, Wolves are still going to have to be savvy. I'm not expecting Wolves to spend 30 million on a defender. I think if people are expecting that, then there needs to be a bit of realisation that Wolves probably aren't going to operate like that for a long time. Probably with these owners now, that's not the way they're going to look to do things. They're going to look to recruit smartly. And, you know, it might be a player that a lot of us aren't too familiar with. I know O'Neill has mentioned that he wants someone with a bit of Premier League experience, but it's how you do that. You know, there was Trevor Chalobah that was mentioned in the Pedro Neto deal, and then you find out they're valuing him at 30 to 35 million, which is just, you know, that's laughable, and it's not going to be something that Wolves are even going to consider. So it's going to be interesting. But I think I'm more confident in the recruitment team now, probably than I have been at any other point of the Fosun era, because there was, aside from the hits in the Championship, which, you know, how badly could it have gone really when you signed the calibre of players they did? I think since then there hasn't been a real plan up until the last 18 months. So fairly confident that they're working. It doesn't feel like it's going to be, you know, a rush to the finish line of they don't know who they're going to get. I think it's just waiting for stuff to fall in place. The market has been slow generally, so it's not surprising that Wolves, who are probably on the 2nd or 3rd tier of transfer lists, just need to wait for things to move and players to fill in elsewhere before they make their move. So I think it's just going to be a little bit of patience for the next week, 10 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And just jumping onto what you said then, Ben, okay, that credit to Matt Hobbs really, because I think Wolves first, the promotion season, obviously signing Neves and Jota in the Championship, obscene business, one of the best seasons we've ever had. Then the year after, we sign, obviously Johnny Otto comes in, Patricio comes in, João Moutinho comes in, Raul Jimenez. They're two of the best summer transfer windows we've ever had. Since then, as Ben said, it's gone off and it's been a bit sporadic. We've overspent to get ourselves out of trouble, which has got ourselves in trouble, and then we've had to sell and sell. Now, as Ben said, the last 18 months or so, credit to Matt Hobbs, there looks like a plan. There looks like now he's been allowed to sort of do things in that area, and rightly so. Look at the business, Craig Dawson, João Gomez, going on from there. It's been a decent few windows, and Wolves look a lot more settled with a plan.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with our transfer business. I think, we've thrown money at things before. We look at the Fabio Silva deal, the Gonzalo Guedes. But the most successful signings we've made in recent years since those two windows that you mentioned, i.e. João Gomez and Mario Lemina for sort of £9 million and Craig Dawson for £3 million. Those are the players who kind of stabilised us. So you don't need to throw money at it. You just need to make smart signings who can fit into the system that you want to play. So I'm more than comfortable with the model that we follow at the moment. We've got players like Neto who we develop through the system in terms of bring them in, develop them, get them back out for big money. You're buying cheap and selling big, aren't you? And, Rodrigo Gomez potentially looks like he could be on that list as well. And every so often we'll throw a bit more at it with the Cunha deal. And that itself looks like a relatively bargain price for the kind of performances he's been putting in as well. So I feel like they've got a little bit of a plan on things now, whereas it was very strange, some of the business we did. But we were very much under Mendes's thumb at that point. We were kind of doing the business that he wanted us to do, whereas we've allowed ourselves a bit of freedom to grow the club how we feel it should be developed now, when we're not necessarily just going to throw a load of Portuguese players at it, albeit we had some very good ones along the way. There was also some very strange deals mixed into that. So I'm confident with Hobbs. I'm confident with the club as a whole in terms of getting these deals right. But it is important we get them right, because we've got a very difficult. I think the league's going to be difficult this season. I think it's going to be more difficult than it was last season. I think you're going to need more points to survive. And I feel at this moment in time, we're going into the season weaker than we went into it for the last couple. So there's plenty of time left on the clock in terms of getting a couple through the door. But I do think they need to get them right, whoever they do bring in.
Yeah, interestingly, I think you've sort of nailed on what Ben said there, Nocky, in terms of, I think the start 11 is weaker, yet I think the squad is stronger. Now, yeah. So now there's genuine options. If one or two players are out or suspended, there are people on the bench. You get is whether Wang's in and out, whether Sarabia's in and out, and you've got a bit of rotation. I think we've probably got 5 or 6 forwards across the run, and we've actually got a centre forward. I know on Saturday we decided not to use him, but when you've got actual wingers in there that you can get the best out of Sarabia or get the best out of Rodrigo to feed the centre forward. I mean, he had 2 really smart assists earlier in the season. So, yeah, just finishing off on that section, Ben. You mentioned it earlier on, but Wolves look like they've got a plan. We know now, as supporters and obviously journalists like yourself, that we know what the model is for Wolves. The Wolves are probably going to, I think O'Neill mentioned it himself, they're probably going to roughly spend up to what they've made, and that'll be it now every year, sell 1 or sell 2, and then that's the model going forward. If the recruitment's good, you don't really mind. It's not about spending 50, 100, 200 million. It's about being smart, and that Brighton, Brentford previously, not so much recently, but that Brighton model, he's sort of set the standard for everyone else.
Yeah, and, it sharpens the mind as well when they know that there's very finite amounts that they've got to spend. And I think just coming back to the depth of the squad, I think that's a lot to do with there hasn't been that many, doesn't feel like there's been that many misses in the last 18 months, which has just helped build a little bit of depth. But I think going back to what Nocky said, I think you look at that side at the moment, and aside from Cunha, I don't think there's like a superstar in there.
Yeah, agreed.
That you go, he's on the ball, let's get up. And that's what concerns me a little bit, because we've always had, like, whether it was, love him or loathe him, and a lot of people did, but Adama got people off their feet as soon as he got the ball. And, we might see that with Rodrigo Gomez as the season goes on. I just would like, if they're going to splash, I would rather it be another forward that teams have to really account for.
Pace.
We're going to hope Cunha does that, because he should do it, particularly in the new role that he's got. I'd just like one more. I worry about the left side a little bit. Huang was completely anonymous. I know he's just he's just such a strange player because he's so effective. And then you look at him sometimes and you just wonder like what he's doing on the pitch, but you can't question it because the numbers were so good and he does offer a real service to the team. But I would like something else in the forward areas, just something a little bit different. I think Bellegarde's going to have a big season. I think it's an important season for him as well. After a year of settling in, and I think we'll see a lot more from him. But for me, if you told me that if Wolves can only make 2 more signings, if they can get another wide player and another centre back, I think I'd be fairly happy with where they're looking at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go into that a little bit in more depth, but I'm in agreement. I think there'll be a little bit more business than that because I think someone else will go that's sort of flirting with it. As people agreeing, Hwang very hit and miss. Wayne Mackay says probably right. Adrian talk about Chiquinho coming in the side, but moving away from pre-season, the news broke and was confirmed yesterday that Pedro Neto departs for Chelsea for just over £50 million. I can't say I'm overly gutted or I felt like I did when Robbie Keane went because I just didn't think that was younger and stuff. But we knew that Pedro Neto was going to depart. We kind of knew that Max was going to depart. Those were the 2 names that was given to me at the end of the last season that Wolves would probably sell. And it's happened. Pedro Neto has given us some magnificent moments. I mean, I know we've talked off air about it, Ben, but the Pedro Neto one's going to hurt considerably more than the Max Kilman one.
Yeah, and it's just because of the type of players they are. But obviously, Neto has them more sort of emotional moments, the type of player that he is as well. I think Kilman made it difficult to have like a strong emotional attachment to, really, as a fan, just because of his demeanour on the pitch. But, you know, looking at it from 10,000 feet, like, Wolves have to do that with a player like Neto. We made the mistake with Traore not cashing in and Jimenez when they were at their peaks. And Wolves have to show to players like, you know, the next lot of Pedro Netos that coming to Wolves is, you know, they're going to help you. And once the move comes, as we've done with Jota as well and Neves, we've sort of honoured their wants and let them move on. But yeah, if you'd have told me of the 5 players in our starting 11, in my opinion, who could have gone to a bigger club, and you go Cunha, Aït-Nouri, Gomez, Kilman and Neto, if you'd have told me that Kilman and Neto were the 2 you go and you make almost £100 million, I think most fans would have taken that, if on the proviso that the other 3 stay, of course. But that to me was effectively the best window that Wolves could have get in terms of their outgoings, because I think Kilman can be replaced for less than 45 million. I think we'll see whether they do, but I think he can be replaced. And look, as we've seen with Jota at Liverpool, clubs like that can afford to have a player that only plays 15, 16 games a season because they've got the players to fill in. Wolves can't have their best player only play 15 games a season. It's just not viable for what Wolves
need. Not for a club like Wolves.
Wolves cannot have Pedro Neto only play 15 games a season while still being worth 60 million quid. The 2 just don't equate for Wolves, and Chelsea will get more out of it. It's a shame, but it's what Wolves have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Ben. Lockie, a good transfer window of sales only becomes a great transfer window if you reinvest that money well.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was coming. It's the model, isn't it? We knew we'd lose at least 1, maybe 2. I'm relatively comfortable with both. I do like Max. I think he's a good player. As a leader, I always questioned that. I didn't think he was a captain. He just didn't feel that way to me. He was at his best when he had someone maybe a little bit more experienced next to him, guiding him, telling him what to do. So I'm comfortable he went. I'm not too disappointed on that one. The Neto one, I think, again, was the right decision, especially for the reasons Ben's touched on. But, you know, a club like Wolves can't carry a 50, 60 million pound asset if the player's not going to play. He's given us some fantastic moments. He's exciting. He's entertaining. He's a good player. But every time he bursts forward, you're expecting one of his hamstrings to go. So you can't carry a player like that with a club like us. I think at Chelsea, he'll do really well because they can manage his minutes. They've got a squad of about 400 there, so they can rotate him. They can keep him fresh. They can just bring him on when they need him and bring him off when the job's done. So you'll probably see him step to the next level now as a result of that. He's not going to be leaned upon quite as much as he was at Wolves. And so I think that's the right decision. But yeah, you've got to reinvest that money. But I'm confident that the majority of that will be reinvested. That is the model, you know, and we're doing it well at the moment. I think when Jota left, it was a transfer record for Wolves. Neves went, it was a transfer record to Wolves, and I think Neto again is a transfer record. So the model's working, and we're getting more money than we're paying for players, and it's giving us an opportunity to develop the squad. So if you lose one and bring in 3 good players, it's absolutely the right thing to do. So I'm not disappointed. All out of that entire list, I wouldn't want to lose Cunha. I wouldn't want to lose Aït-Nouri because I think he gives you something different down that side. I think Cunha is exciting and he can drop deep and he can affect the game. He can score your goals, and he's got a few injury problems himself, but you're more confident that you're going to get more games out of him. So I'm relatively pleased with what we've done so far. The players we've bought in, we went early on them as well, but we just need a little bit more quality now, and it won't have been a bad window. And we've also got to remember that we've got players who've come back now as well. Gary's spoken to them. Chiquinho seems to want to stay. It looks like Guedes potentially has been involved quite heavily, so maybe he wants to stay as well. So that's a couple of players that haven't been available to us for the last couple of seasons, who are now potentially going to come in and make an impact as well. So the squad is looking healthy. But I think we've done it to death. We need some more quality in the 11.
Absolutely. Just finishing off on Pedro Neto, obviously, I mean, by all means, a really good guy around the club, popular, makes time for people, a character, fun when he's playing. Other than when he's playing Wolves, I wish him really well.
He's dead to me now.
That's just you, Knocker.
I couldn't care less about him now. He's finished to me.
I won't get any joy out of him playing well for Chelsea now. That it doesn't.
Nah,
I don't get any joy.
Of course not. I don't wish him well against Wolves, but equally, go on, have a great career, do whatever you do. But I think, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, and it'll probably come back to bite me on the arse, I'm not sure Chelsea was the best move for him. But if you look at it in terms of squad rotation, of managing his minutes and protecting him, it probably is a good move. But in terms of where he could play and who he could play for, I think Pedro Neto could have probably gone a tier up.
It's a club Chelsea. Out of control, isn't it, Chelsea? It's absolutely out of control, that club is. They're just throwing money. They're bringing people in on 7 and 8 year contracts. It's an absolute mess. So, yeah, I expected him to go to a Champions League team. I thought that'd be a natural progression for him. So, it does seem like a strange move, but albeit there wasn't too many clubs willing to pay the money that Chelsea have paid.
And up front, Ben, confirm that, isn't it? I think they've paid that all up front as well. There's no instalments for that.
Yeah, straight.
And that does not happen very often at the moment. I mean, equally, they're trying to force Chalobah out. I think they've pushed Gallagher out. So the 2 homegrown players they desperately need to sell to balance the books. It's not a great way of working their business, is it? If the lads who you've brought up and trained, that you push them out the door to balance the books. But anyway, that's Chelsea, that's not Wolves. But anyway, we move on from Pedro Neto. Thanks for the memories, particularly against West Brom. And thank you for that £50 million. This is episode 102 of the Wolves Report with Mirror Football's Ben Husband and our club captain, Mark Knock. We've done the pre-season roundup and the tactics. We talked about Neto. Let's talk more about the departure and arrival still to happen. We've touched on it briefly. I'll get the ball rolling this one. Wolves, again, have been linked with various goalkeepers. I do think that Jose Sarr may depart Wolves. And I say that because the goalkeepers that Wolves are linked with, I don't see them coming as being a number 2. Wolves are not spending 10, 15 million pounds on a reserve goalkeeper at this stage. I do not see it. Ben, any take on that? You think Jose Sarr maybe get tempted to go to Saudi?
Yeah, I think if the offer comes, and I think Sam Johnston makes the most sense out of any of the links. Just
£10 million looks like very good value.
He's worked with Cutler as well at 2 different clubs. That to me, if you sell Sarr for 20 and can bring Johnston in for 10, and then use that 10 somewhere else,
for his own contract, doesn't it? Then?
Yeah, I think that's a move I'd probably be on board with. I wouldn't agree with going to splash 25-30 on Ramsdale or something like that. But I think if you can make the change, and Sarr is looking for the move as well, and you can do it and still make a bit of money, I don't think it would make us significantly worse to have Sam Johnston in goal over Jose Sarr. I really like Sarr. I think he's a really good goalkeeper. I'm not entirely sure he's the type of keeper O'Neill wants, if I'm honest. And I think there's been a few times where he's looked particularly wound up with some of the stuff he's done with the ball. So that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, Nocky, Jose Sarr, one of the best shot stoppers in terms of, we saw with his saves, XG was, I think, the best in Europe 2 years ago when he joined. It was some of the saves he was doing was incredible. But as Ben mentioned, there are some erratic decisions when you start taking on people and you play passes that only the keeper can see that no one else can see. And for a manager that wants a bit of composure to bring the ball out of the back, I'm not sure Sarr is that man going forward.
No, I think he's a very good shot stopper. He's incredibly erratic. The ball at his feet, you're having kittens, aren't you? I mean, personally, I think we need 2 goalkeepers because I'm not convinced by either of our backups. I don't think either of them are at the level. Sam Johnson, it makes sense. I don't think he's on the level of Sarr, though. I really don't. I don't think he's at the quality of Sarr. I think we're weaker with him in there, to be completely honest. I'm not completely convinced with many of the names that have been linked to us. I don't think they're an improvement. When we lost Patricio and we brought in Sarr, we were a little bit nervous. So I do think Sarr actually turned out to be a bit of a step up on Patricio. I'm not convinced that Johnson will be. So I can understand that deal. It's cheap. It kind of makes sense in that point.
Yeah,
but
I think Wolves can do. I think Wolves can do better for that money. It's just of the names linked. I think Johnston makes the most sense. But it wouldn't surprise me if Wolves go and get someone, that we've not particularly seen a lot of, and will come in and do a job. I just think I'm only mentioning of the names that have been linked, and I think of those, I would just rather Wolves do a Johnston type transfer fee than a Ramsdale type transfer fee.
Yeah, I completely agree. But then, we picked up Jose Sarr for 7 million quid, something like that. So there's keepers out there, isn't there? But the Johnston thing keeps coming back round, doesn't it? So you suspect there's no smoke without fire on that one. I just personally I wouldn't be overly comfortable with him controlling our back line.
Yeah, I mean, I thought an England squad keeper that's 30, 31, £10 million, he's nothing in modern football. And is he as good a shot stopper as Jose Sarr? Probably not. Is he slightly better with his feet? I'd say he is. He's got previous with Cutler, who for me has improved Jose Sarr again. I think Sarr has improved under him, and I know a few people, maybe it's because of who he's played for, I don't know, but if he puts the Wolves shirt on, I don't really care who he's played for.
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not sure how much improvements you can make at 31 years old. He is a backup goalkeeper.
You've improved, Nocky.
He's a backup keeper for England, but he's very much a backup keeper. You're never going to bring him on, are you? Better off playing Harry Kane in that position, really. So I just don't think he improves us, and I think after losing Kilman as well, you want a figure who's quite stable there, someone who controls that whole back line, can manoeuvre people, especially when you've got Totti, who's a little bit erratic himself, and Mosquera, who's not experienced at this kind of speed of football. You need someone behind him who can really dominate the game. I don't see him doing that vocally. So, I'd love to be wrong, and if he comes in and has a fantastic season for us, then, as soon as he puts a shirt on, he gets my back in anyway, but I'm just a little bit nervous about that position.
Yeah, I do think come the crunch, I know there's a lot of Saudi money going for players, and they want some more Premier League players, and there's a huge budget. I think Sarr was linked to last Christmas that it was a potential January offer. I don't know if Ben put that rumour out there or not, I don't know, but I think he was definitely linked, and I think if Wolves did get 20 million and you could get Johnson in for 10, I don't see Wolves turning that down. I think that's very much part of our model. His contract pays for himself, Wolves make a profit, and get a keeper for me that, if you're balancing the books in terms of with his feet and hands, I think the keepers are roughly the same. I mean, people will probably shoot me down for that, but we shall see. The other one that concerns me, guys, this pre-season is Rayan Aït-Nouri. Unusually for me, when Wolves have played this pre-season, it's been very much about getting Lima and Doherty forward, and you would think that they would play lopsided to get the most out of Aït-Nouri with him going forward. So that's a really interesting one. The Liverpool links are still there. Andy Robinson, I think he's damaged his shoulder in the Euros or before that. He's 31, 32 now. Aït-Nouri linked with Liverpool. That's the big concern for me. Do I get some confidence, though, they've let Hugo Bueno go? Does that tell me they're not going to let Rayan Aït-Nouri go now? I don't know. Ben, your take on the Rayan Aït-Nouri situation?
Liverpool aren't spending what it's going to take to sign Aït-Nouri. They're just not going to.
And what would you say? What would it take to say Rayan Aït-Nouri?
60.
He's so unique.
I don't think they're going to pay 60 million for a left back.
But do you know what though, Ben? And only really Wolves fans see it, but could you imagine him in a purist attacking team when he's allowed, if you play next to Van Dijk and you're allowed to go and attack and attack. He'd absolutely kill it in a team like that.
Yeah, without context, that's a perfect signing for Liverpool. But I can't see a team paying that much money for Aït-Nouri yet. I don't think they'll let Bueno go. I think this pre-season has been about looking at what else Wolves can do. I think that's what you've also got to remember at pre-season. It's the only time when O'Neill can go, right, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to let Aït-Nouri do a little bit more defensive work. We're going to see what happens if we overload on the right instead of the left. I think when it comes to the crunch, I think the game will still revolve a lot around what Aït-Nouri can do going forward. I would be pretty stunned if it would take if someone comes in with that type of money. I think they'd probably look at it. Whether someone wants to come in with that type of money is the question that I don't think that happens at this point as well.
And this is why I think we will sign another left-footed centre-back. And the reason being is because then you've got Totti, for example, if Rayan Aït-Nouri isn't fit or you are playing really defensive and you want to overload the right, Totti's your perfect left-back because he sticks, he defends. He's one-on-one defensively. He's good. Last season against Kulusevski, Phil Foden, Diaby, he has marked some of the best attacking players in the Premier League out of the game. Granted, he's not the most gifted footballer and he can drop a short pass in. But defensively, without the ball, he's very, very good. And if you're asking him to defend to allow the overlap on the right, he's not a bad option. But you sell Aït-Nouri and then Totti's your only left back option. That feels even if it was a stupid amount of money, it's a massive own goal if they do that without getting a replacement in. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see him doing it. They're not going to pay 60 odd million for a backup left back, which is probably what he's going to be for the next season or two. We wouldn't have let Bueno go if that was going to be the case. But if someone does come throwing that kind of money around, there'll be a conversation to be had. I certainly don't think it's in their plans to get rid of him at the moment.
I think they've probably got indications that that's not happening as well. Like if there was, there's a lot of talk between clubs behind the scenes of what teams are planning, and I think they would have by this point of the window. They let Bueno go on. What was it, Friday that Bueno was that deal came out? So I think by now Wolves would know one way or another that there's a chance Aït-Nouri goes. And I think if there was even a chance, if there had been any type of discussion, because look, they'd have known about Neto from probably January, that Neto was going to be going this summer. And it was, even O'Neill said their biggest concern was that it was going to be a few days before the end of the window. The concern wasn't losing Neto, it was when they were losing Neto. And I don't think Wolves have got any type of sentiment like that with Aït-Nouri. So.
Absolutely. Is there any other concerns, Nocky, that you have for anyone else that may go? I don't see. I mean, I think João Gomez has another season if he continues his development like he is. Goodness knows what money he'd go for. I don't see. And then Ben makes a really good point. Clubs know what's happening. They wouldn't have let Hugo go now. And even if a stupid amount of money comes in for Aït-Nouri, it's probably not going to happen. But Cunha, he's magnificent. Hamstring injury though. Hopefully he's available to start against Chelsea. Although I think he's back training today. But why risk him at Arsenal? There's no need to unless he's 100%. Is there? So, back to the main thing, Nocky. Anyone else that you would be concerned about losing realistically this window?
Not particularly. I think we would have a plan in place. I mean, you got the potential for Semedo because his contract's starting to run down. There's a chance someone could come in with a bit of decent money for him and we'd take that plunge rather than lose him on a free if he's not going to sign a new deal. Cunha, I don't see him going. The money we spent for him, we're not going to turn a massive profit on him, so it's senseless. João Gomez, I think we sell him now. We're not going to make the money if we sell him in 12 months. I think we'll double our money if he has another season at Wolves. And we'll lose some of the fringe players. Your Joe Hodges of the world will go. So I think some of them will be moved on. Potentially Guedes as well. I think if he's not going to be in those plans, he'll look to move him on.
Do you know what I've liked Guedes pre-season, Nocky? I think he's not someone that's been jogging around. He's someone that's been pressing and tracking. Well, now, obviously, he's got to put himself in the window. But from someone that didn't really look like they wanted to be here, he actually looks like he's interested now.
I liked him. when he was first here. I don't think it was a quality issue with him. I just don't think he settled. He didn't really want to come in the first place, and he was looking to get back as quick as he could. And maybe he's changed now. Maybe he feels like he can have a little bit of a go under Gary O'Neill. And I don't think he'd have had the minutes through pre-season if the plan was to kind of kick him out and abandon ship. It's a waste of a position, a waste of a training exercise. So I don't think they would have done that. So I think there's an opportunity for him to come into the team and have a bit of a go with it. But there's still a possibility he could be moved on as well, because I think he would be interested in a move across to Spain, I think, if one was to come in for him that suited him. So I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility. Other than that, I'm relatively comfortable that the squad will look how it does now, with maybe a couple of additions coming in to support the starting 11. I think that's probably where we'll be.
If Guedes does go, for me, Ben, that means we need another forward, because he's very much part of that sort of 6 options we've got. And Paul Somerset-Wolf asked, what's happening with Pedence? Now, I know we had that calf concern, but I don't see anything, Ben, other than, I know he's come back with a good attitude, and I like Pedence. I know he very much splits opinion, but if Wolves can get their £8 or £9 million for Pedence, I think he'd be going, and I'll be very, very surprised if it's not back to Greece.
Yeah, I think he's had a good attitude up to a point of, if it gets tight towards the end of the window and Olympiacos have made a bid and we've turned it down, I think that nice attitude might quickly turn a little bit different. Fair play to, I've got nothing but respect for both Pedence and Guedes for the way that they've conducted themselves this summer. They could have acted very differently. They've both portrayed, at least, that they want to still give it a go, and whether even that's just keeping yourself fit and waiting for the move that you want. You look back to what O'Neill said last year about not wanting certain players even around the club when their attitude isn't right, and we've seen that with Fabio Silva, who has had no involvement with the senior squad at all. And so Guedes can't be as bad as a lot of people like to make out that his attitude is. He's clearly come back with a different mindset, and because I don't think O'Neill would tolerate it. There's no skin for O'Neill in it, really. If he decided that he doesn't like him, it's essentially a previous regime. It's not going to fall back on him that he didn't get the most out of this player, because it's happened with previous managers. So I think he clearly sees something, and if we can get him bought into what his role is, I still think he can be a good player for us.
He's clearly a good footballer. There's talent there, and if he's buying into it, I mean, he's someone really that I'd even consider thinking, well, he's someone that you want to be involved at Arsenal. You need a bit of physicality, and you need a little bit of pace, and he's not weak, and he's certainly not slow. Yeah.
Again, as we've been sort of talking at length, I think Wolves will have plans in place for all these eventualities. That that's what good football clubs should have. So if Guedes stays, I think great, and I think they'll try and integrate him as much as they can. I think there'll certainly be some contingency plans if a bid comes in, because I still think, like Nocky said, if a bid comes in, they'd rather be cashing a little bit of money on him rather than having to do it elsewhere down the line. But yeah, I think he becomes an option in the squad now. I've seen nothing to the contrary. I think he's acquitted himself as well as he could do. I think some fans will take a bit of winning over, because I think there is just such a negative impression of him, rightly or wrongly. And we'll see if he can turn that around, because he is still a really good option. When we signed him, there was a reason Wolves fans were so excited. He is a good player.
He's a good player that scored season after season spectacular goals in Spain. That goal, when he's allowed that freedom to cut inside and hit it, he can do the damage, and he's a really good footballer. I'll be happy if he stays, but equally, if him and Pedence went, I think that means Wolves need 2 forwards. 2 wide forwards as opposed to just 1 to replace Neto. Nocky, I'll take this one onto you, and I want to put Ben through this pain, but there is an elephant in the room, and the elephant is called Fabio Silva. As far as I'm aware, he's training with, I think, some of the development sides, which is a real kick in the teeth for him, for someone that's alleged to be on 60, 70 grand, a £35 million footballer. Again, he didn't pick his price tag, but if you're not being part of things because the manager suggests that you aren't applying yourself the way he'd like or what's expected of you as a professional footballer, then it's hard to have sympathy.
He's made it clear he wants to leave, so why would you put him in the first team? It's not like you're going to see a great deal from him. He's been poor for us. He's been a disaster, and it's not his fault. He cost 35 billion, but for that kind of price tag, he's not improved. I don't think he's any better now than he was day one. So he's clearly going to go. My suspicion is it's probably going to be another loan. I don't see anyone shelling out any kind of decent money for him. It's where he's going to go. Is it? You'd expect maybe he'll go to Italy or Spain, somewhere like that. But in terms of being able to sell him, what are you going to get? 6, 7, 8, 9
Yeah,
million
I
for
mean,
him
I think
moment?
there's been it was in one of the, I can't remember who it was, but it was released today that 3 teams had made an inquiry about a loan when Wolves want to make that deal permanent. Because for me, if I know this might sound negative, but hear me out. If you're going to give him away on loan for a year and his contract runs out, you kind of almost need him to sign an extension if he goes a year away, because and then you're flirting with the end and he's decreasing. Would you agree with that, Ben? I would say I will loan you, but you need to sign a deal to add on, because if he has a good season, then we can cash in. Letting him go out on loan and then he's only got 12 months left. It doesn't. That feels a bit of a backwards move.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point where you just cash in and get anything you can for him. He's been on loan for Anderlecht, for Rangers, for PSV. None of these loan moves have improved his value. His value's going down all the time. You know, he went to Scotland and struggled and wasn't good enough in Scotland. I'll be honest, I expected him to go up there and absolutely rip it up.
Too.
He didn't.
Me too.
Because I thought if he goes there and scores 12, 13 goals, is there a side that are coming up that might have a sniff, or his value's just going down? I don't see him going anywhere and being good. So I think you just go 5 million. Yeah, let's just do it. Write it off as what it was, the worst transfer that Wolves have probably ever made, and just close the book on it. Because what are we doing at this point? Just extend another year, and we're getting to 2027 and we're still loaning him out to Hitchin Town and see if he can build up his value and we can get 200.
No offense to the Hitchin Town. Please don't come on the socials.
He wouldn't get in. So let's just cut. I know
Yeah,
what I've said.
You have, Ben. And do you know what, Ben? I mean, I know Knocking Tyler give me loads of stick for this, and they do on the group chats about it, but I really wanted it to work for Fabio. And there was that game he had against Villa 3 years ago in the first half, and he terrorised Tyrone Mings. He was fantastic. He was so good in that game. I don't remember, we drew 1-1 and we beat them. I don't know. But we didn't lose very many. But he was so good. And I thought, well, this is the coming of Fabio now. And I think he came after 60 minutes. He was knackered. But for whatever reason, the word of the attitude and the non-application is so disappointing. So I agree. If Wolves get 5 million, I would slap on an obscene sell-on just in case he decided one day that he was going to apply himself properly and use some of the talent he has shown us on 1% of the occasions. So for me, yeah, I'm taking 5 million and I'm putting an obscene sell on.
Do you know what I'd actually consider if they were up for it? If Porto wanted to come and sign him and not pay a lot of money for it and be happy to take a sell on, and he can go back to the club that he never wanted to leave in the first place and just end it at least in a nice way, because it's where he wants to play. And if Porto would go, right, we can get him back. You know, we sold him for an obscene amount of money, get a little bit of money, pay him back to Wolves, and he goes there and does what he should have done. You know, because it wasn't his fault. He never wanted to leave Porto in the first place. So at least there's a slight happy ending to what I'm just sick of talking about it. I'm absolutely sick of talking about it.
It's annoying. I mean, there was quite. I mean, I know Prudence is fiery and he's had his traditional banging someone out in pre-season, but I like Prudence and what he did, and at least Prudence produced the goods. And Prudence is a European winner, Conference League or not. He's got a European trophy. He was fantastic against Villa twice, making and scoring, so making goals. At least he's done something. Fabio has got nothing to hang his hat on at all. Moving away from Fabio Silva, because Ben's going to start sending me some unpleasant DMs. Nelson Semedo, player of the season last year, one of the best one-on-one defenders, fantastic ball carrier. We all know that his end product in the final third isn't really that. If he's in front of goal or wide, there isn't really a lot of quality there. But as a defender and as a ball carrier in his own third, absolutely fantastic. But Noki, he's got 11 months left on his contract. I'm really surprised that Wolves haven't cashed in. I was convinced that if one player was going to go and Wolves would probably get, I don't know, 10 million pounds to cash in on the player with 1 year left on his deal, I thought that would be Nelson Semedo. I'm glad he's not gone, because I think over the season, he's a fantastic footballer that was at his peak of his career last year. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. So it's very unusual. I don't know if we're in an Adama situation or Wolves don't want to, because I've not heard of any contract extensions, but 30-31 for me, he's no longer particularly old as a footballer, especially someone who is as consistently fit and able and available as Nelson Semedo. I'm offering a new deal Nelson. Nocky.
I like him. I'd give him a new deal. I think he brings a level of experience. I've always been a little bit disappointed with him going forward, but I think defensively he's improved so much from day one up to where he is now. He's a reliable defender. He very rarely gets beat, very rarely gets caught out of position. So I'd absolutely be looking to give him a new deal. I mean, you could cash him, but with what he's got left on his deal, what you're going to get 5, maybe 10 million at a push. You still got to replace him, haven't you? So for me, I'd absolutely keep him. I think he's a good player.
Ben?
Yeah, I completely agree. And if they're going to go to 4 at the back, then I want Nelson Semedo playing at right back over anyone else. And if he can pass on some knowledge to Lima as well, and you can say, if they can give him another year extension, Semedo plays the entire season. This season, Lima drops in and out, and Lima can spend the next 12 months learning off him, and then we can have a nice transition this time next year. Then I think that suits all parties. I don't think at the minute it makes any logistical sense for us to sell Semedo. As we've said, if we sell it, if he goes for a free, if he goes for 5 million, we're not getting the value on him that we should be getting anyway, because he's
if he's got 3 years left on his deal, Wolves are probably still going to get 15-20 million for him at least.
I wouldn't start below 20 million if he still had years on his contract. So we can mention his age, but as we've just said, he's coming off the best season that he's had for Wolves in the Premier League. So I'm not that worried about him going for a free compared to going for 5 million. But yeah, get him a new deal, even if it's just extending him for another year, and then because at some point he's probably going to want to go and get another deal elsewhere and get some money. He's obviously handsomely paid at Wolves, but if he can go somewhere else and go and enjoy the riches that are on offer there, then fair enough. But I'd rather be in a position where I'm happy that Lima can come in now and can start games. I'm not there yet. So
the concern now would be as well, Nocky, if someone came in 15-20 million for Semedo, Wolves are going to be really tempted. But if you're offering me Matt Doherty, who for me isn't a right back, he's a wing back. Matt Doherty's best at getting forward and finding space, but he doesn't really do that anymore. He's not a particularly great defender. He's a steady set of hands that's done okay, but I don't want him starting as a right back in the back 4. He wasn't a regular as a right back in the Championship as a back 4. Matt Doherty peaked under Nuno when he was allowed to do what he did best and getting space and getting goals positions and hitting the crate across the face of goal and scoring me loads of points in my fantasy team. But that Matt Doherty doesn't seem to be there now, and I don't think from the Brazilian second division to the Premier League in 3 weeks is really going to happen. So if Wolves did sell Nelson Semedo, I think they have to get another right back in, and I just don't see that happening.
The problem you bring another right back in, what you then do with Lima? Because I agree with Ben, the plan's absolutely for Lima to spend this season learning, then he becomes your established right back in a season or two. You can't put Doherty. If Doherty starts for us the majority of games this season, then we've really took a backward step. I think he's someone you bring in when you want to perhaps close a game out. You want to make it a little bit more solid and go to maybe a 5 at the back. But you've got an option there. You can even drop into midfield and try and support that right-hand side of midfield if you need to. But he's absolutely not an option for us starting at right back. So if we do sell Semedo, and I think you're right. If someone was to come in 20 million, Wolves would sell him. I'm pretty sure of that because that's decent money for a player with a year left on his contract. But I don't think anybody will come in with that kind of money for him. And B, it wouldn't make any sense because we'd have to reinvest the whole amount to bring in another right back.
To then push back Lima's progression, which wouldn't make
you're giving yourself a problem, aren't you, for the sake of 20 million quid? So I don't think anyone will come in with that kind of money. I don't think Wolves will be looking to sell.
Just one other thing on that, as Ben mentioned, if Wolves are transitioning to a back 4, which we've seen all pre-season, the most suited person of all the Wolves defenders to a back 4 is Nelson Semedo. So that's the one player I don't want to see going. I love Nelson. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to move on to some of the questions. I think we've covered pretty much most of them. We'll just whiz through quickly before we preview Arsenal. Mark Harvey has, what 3 players would you like to realistically join? Come to the club. I mean, we could do a whole show on names, but I think the 3 positions, just to take the question down a little bit, Mark, it's a centre-back, it's a wide right forward, and I think if Podence and Guedes probably do go, probably another forward as well. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, if we're putting a name on it for one of them, I'd love to see us go for Tammy Abraham, because there's rumours he might be available.
Interesting.
Bournemouth are sniffing around him. I don't think we pay the money we'd need to pay to get him, but somebody like that.
Is he not coming back from a cruise yet?
No idea, mate.
Ben,
But he's
did he
a
have
player.
an injury about a year ago?
He was injured. Yeah, it's just the wages with him, but yeah, he would be the type of player that would be interesting. It's whether that doesn't feel like the type of player Wolves would go for.
No, it doesn't.
No, I think we've been stung on those players that have had those injuries. I mean, sometimes only happen once, but I mean, we've been badly hurt with Sasa Kalajdzic, no fault of his own. But to have a double cruciate and you've been there just over a year is just very, very, very unfortunate. Mark, thank you as always for your contribution to the Wolves report. I just quickly think we covered this one. Wayne Mackay says, "Do you think the sale of Neto so close to start the season was bad timing?" I think Wolves would like to sell him on the opening game, the opening day of pre-season, and get it done. But equally, and I don't mean this to sound defeatist, if you had a kind start to the season, then yes, it's unlikely Wolves are going to get anything at Arsenal. They might do. We don't know. There's probably not a better time to play them. That might come back to bite me in the ass at 5 o'clock on Saturday. I don't know. But I think it was a matter of when, not if, Wayne. And I think he was going. And as soon as Wolves got the 50 that they wanted, that was that. So, yeah, cheers, Wayne. Thank you for being part of the show. I've had a few of the questions, but not a chance to get through them. I want to talk a little bit about Saturday's game. It's football. In any game of football, you've always got a chance. But when you open the season up going away to the Emirates to face Arsenal, who are so desperately chasing down Pep Guardiola's Man City, it is a huge ask. Ben, do Wolves have any chance on Saturday?
No.
Thanks for listening.
Look, I think Arsenal are going to come roaring out the blocks. And yeah, you could, if you gave me a choice of playing Man City or Arsenal first game, I'd pick Man City, I think.
Every day.
Man City tune up. I think Arsenal are going to be bang at it. And it's not to say that we're not, obviously we've got a chance, haven't we? But I'd be very surprised. It's just it's a horrible first game because you're that excited for the season to start, but I just can't see a way that Wolves get a result.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and it's Nocky. That's obviously Ben's not being disrespectful to Wolves, or neither have I. There's always a chance. We've seen Wolves win at Arsenal, we've won at Chelsea, we've won at Man United, we've won at Man City, we've won at Liverpool. We've seen this in the last 5 or 6 years. All those results have happened. But this is a tough game from a team that will be hurting, that have come so close. It is an absolute stinker of an opening day fixture.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a puncher's chance, haven't we? But that's about it. I mean, Cunha's not going to play on a Lamina.
No point risking him.
No, Lamina's 50-50 from what we were hearing. So, no, I don't give us any chance. I mean, I'd love to think we can because obviously we're going to be there, but I just feel like they're a team that are going to be going for the title again. We're a team that's going to be looking at a 13th, 14th place finish again. So I just think that'd be far too good for us all over the pitch.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Ben, the starting 11 on Saturday, I don't know if Lamina, I think Lamina got a dead leg on the back. I don't know if it was a hamstring or not. I don't know if anyone's seen any confirmation of that. But again, if he's a risk, why are we risking him? There's absolutely no point. Cunha, back in training today, might be ready. Again, what's the point of risking them? If Wolves are in the game later on and they're both on the bench, let's have a look at it. But there's no point. It's not the final game of the season, and we might get 7th. This is the opening game of the season with 37 games after this. I'm not writing it off, but I want to look at the bigger picture.
I think if Cunha's fit to play, then play him. I'm not completely against him playing if the medical staff are happy that he's. And I know we've seen when that goes badly with Neto, but if there's a reason that Wolves employ a medical team, and if they give him the sign off, then I'd play him. It's just they're just going to have to manage it because they've still got. I joked at the start that we've got no chance. Obviously, we've still got a chance. And if your best player's fit and able to play, I think it's very defeatist to just
last year
to not play him at all. So we'll see. But yeah, I think it's obviously it's going to be a really tough game. But they won't be writing it off as quickly as I just did then. So
no, of course not. And in the Premier League, we've seen Man City. I think before the World Cup break a while ago, back from they lost at home to Brentford. Was it? Results in football, anything can happen in football. The likelihood is Wolves are going to lose by a couple of goals. Very rarely they get stuff under Gary O'Neill. They're always in games. Last year, Arsenal went 2-0 at bang bang. Wolves stuck fast, got a great goal from Cunha, and then later on in the game, Wolves put a bit of pressure on. Anything can happen, and with the quality of Cunha, now we've got a centre forward. Anything could happen, but it'll be a tough game. But I'm just saying, I would not risk anybody, especially with Chelsea.
What I would say is, I think Arsenal might come roaring out the blocks quick. I don't think they're going to be at full intensity and match fit for 90 minutes. So if you can stay in the game and get to half time and see where you are there, then I think we've got a chance, because I think teams aren't going to be at the level that they want to be at yet. But I think it's just a case we might get blown away in the first 20 minutes and it'd be all over. But if
that's what happened last year, but we stuck in the game, got one back, and it ended 2-1. So who knows? This has been episode 102 of the Wolves Report. We're ending the show now. Just want to have a quick shout out again. I mentioned at the start of the show, the podcast was kindly invited to the Content Creators Cup, which is basically a charity a fundraising event for the Wolves Foundation. And we've been very fortunate to partner with New Homes Mortgage Experts, Act Solutions, and Edwards & Co. Accountants, who have kindly sponsored us and our kit, who are also helping us raise some money towards the foundation. So thank you so much, guys, for being part of the podcast and helping raise money for the foundation, who do some fantastic stuff in the local area of Wolverhampton. We've said something positive. Unfortunately, this bit might not be. Prediction time. Nocky, we'll go with you a positive attitude first, and you can do Tyler's as well.
Oh, God. 3-0 Arsenal, I think. Saka with the brace. I think he'll get 2.
Ben?
3-1, and we'll go with Strand Larsen getting off the mark nice and early, so we haven't got to worry about it being 5-6 games without a goal. Just get that cleared off straight away and then get on with the season.
Absolutely. I cannot go, even though I don't believe Wolves are going to get anything, I cannot go with a hat-trick of defeats. So I'm going to go with a spectacular Arsenal 0, Wolves 0, an absolute stinker performance, and come home with a clean sheet on the opening game of the season. This has been episode 102 of the Wolves Report. Thank you so much to our captain, Mark Knock, and also Ben Husband, who's enjoyed his holiday last week. See you next week at the Wolves.